What happens when a harmless party joke becomes the last straw for a marriage? Can a husband's silent response to public humiliation trigger a chain of lawful actions no one expects? When legal documents are served in front of friends, who is really to blame? The champagne bubbles tickled my throat as I surveyed the rooftop party from my position near the glass railing. Below us, the city sparkled like scattered diamonds, but tonight, I felt like I was the one truly shining. The startup launch party was everything I'd dreamed of. Sleek, sophisticated, and filled with people who finally recognized my worth. "Seraphine, you absolutely killed it with the marketing campaign," gushed Rebecca from accounting, her wineglass nearly empty. "The pre-launch buzz was insane." I smiled, feeling the familiar warmth of validation spreading through my chest. After months of 18-hour days, weekend strategy sessions, and countless revisions, hearing those words felt like oxygen to my lungs. "Thank you," I said, tucking a strand of my dark hair behind my ear. "It's been incredible working with such a dynamic team." Across the rooftop, I spotted Owen standing near the appetizer table, looking characteristically uncomfortable in his navy blazer. My husband had never been one for corporate events, preferring the quiet predictability of his high school classroom to the energy of startup culture. He caught my eye and offered a small wave, his teacher's smile polite but distant. "Is that your husband?" Rebecca asked, following my gaze. "He seems nice." The word nice hung in the air like a deflated balloon. Nice, safe, boring. Everything I'd been trying to escape by throwing myself into this job, this world where ambition mattered more than comfort. "Owen's wonderful," I said automatically, though my attention was already drifting back to the crowd of investors and colleagues surrounding us. The music shifted to something with a heavier beat, and I felt a familiar presence behind me before I heard his voice. "There's our star," Damian Fell said, his hand briefly touching the small of my back as he joined our circle. At 41, my boss commanded attention effortlessly, silver threading through his dark hair, expensive cologne mixing with the night hair, and that confident smile that made board members write checks. "Damian," I breathed, feeling that electric current that had been building between us for months. "The party is incredible." "Only because you made tonight possible," he said, his eyes holding mine a beat longer than necessary. "Ladies, I hope you're properly celebrating our Seraphine. Without her vision, we'd still be another forgotten app in the store." Rebecca and the other women nodded enthusiastically, but I barely heard their responses. Damian's praise felt like sunlight after years in the shadows of Owen's quiet, steady world. "You're too kind," I said, though every cell in my body was drinking in his attention. "Kindness has nothing to do with it," Damian replied, stepping closer. The crowd around us had grown, phones appearing as people began recording the impromptu celebration. "This is about recognizing excellence when we see it." I could see Owen in my peripheral vision, still standing by the food table, watching our interaction with an expression I couldn't quite read. Part of me knew I should go to him, include him in this moment, but the intoxicating energy of being celebrated kept me rooted in place. "Speech! Speech!" someone called out, and soon the entire party was chanting, phones raised, recording everything. My heart pounded as Damian raised his glass. "To Seraphine Doral, the brilliant mind behind our success." The crowd cheered, and in that moment of celebration, with dozens of people watching and cameras rolling, Damian leaned in and pressed his lips to my neck, just below my ear. The kiss was soft but unmistakably intimate, lasting just long enough for everyone to see, to record, to remember. The crowd erupted in cheers and wolf whistles. Someone shouted, "Get it, girl," while others laughed and applauded. The energy was electric, intoxicating, and I found myself laughing along with them, my face flushed with champagne and adrenaline. "Damian," I said, playfully swatting his arm, but I was smiling, basking in the attention, in the feeling of being desired and celebrated simultaneously. Through the crowd, I caught sight of Owen's face. He stood frozen, his untouched wine glass in his hand, staring at us with an expression of complete shock. Our eyes met for just a moment before he looked away, his jaw tight, his shoulders rigid. "Oh my God, that was so hot," Rebecca giggled, still recording. "You two have such amazing chemistry." I should have felt guilty. I should have immediately gone to Owen, explained that it was nothing, that Damian was just being dramatic. Instead, I felt powerful, desired, important. "It's just startup culture," I said with a laugh, though my skin still tingled where Damian's lips had touched. "We're all very expressive here." The party continued around us, but I noticed Owen had disappeared from the food table. I scanned the rooftop until I spotted him near the elevator, his back to the celebration, shoulders hunched as he waited for the doors to open. "I should go check on Owen," I said, though I made no move to leave the circle of admirers still congratulating me. "Let him sulk." Marina Voss, my best friend, appeared at my elbow with a fresh glass of champagne. "Tonight is about you, Sarah. Don't let anyone dim your shine." Marina had been my cheerleader since college, always pushing me to want more, be more, demand more from life. She worked in public relations and understood the importance of image, of being seen as successful and desirable. "You're right," I said, accepting the champagne. "This is my night." By the time I finally made it home to our apartment, it was nearly midnight. Owen's car was in the parking garage, but when I slipped into our bedroom, he was lying on his side facing away from me, his breathing too controlled to be natural sleep. "Owen," I whispered, sliding under the covers. "Are you awake?" Silence. "The party was amazing," I continued, my voice soft in the darkness. "I wish you'd stayed longer. Everyone was asking about you." Still nothing. "Owen, come on, don't be like this." I reached across the space between us, my hand finding his shoulder. He didn't pull away, but he didn't respond either. "It was just a silly moment. You know how Damian is. He's dramatic about everything." Finally, Owen spoke, his voice quiet and measured. "Seraphine, I'm tired. Can we talk about this tomorrow?" But even as I agreed and settled into sleep, I was already crafting my social media post in my head. The videos from tonight were probably already circulating, and I wanted to control the narrative. This was about success, about being celebrated for my hard work. Anyone who couldn't understand that was just jealous of what I'd accomplished. I drifted off to sleep with the memory of champagne bubbles and Damian's lips on my skin, telling myself that Owen would understand once he had time to think about it rationally. I was wrong. I woke up to the sound of the coffee maker and the soft click of Owen's laptop closing. Sunlight streamed through our bedroom curtains, and for a moment, I felt the lingering warmth of last night's triumph. Then I remembered Owen's silence, his rigid posture by the elevator, and reality settled over me like a cold blanket. "Morning," I said as I padded into the kitchen, my silk robe trailing behind me. Owen was already dressed in his teaching clothes, khakis, button-down shirt, sensible shoes. He looked up from his phone briefly, offered a tight smile, and returned to scrolling. "Coffee's fresh," he said without looking at me again. I poured myself a mug and settled at our small dining table, watching him. Owen had always been methodical in the mornings, checking his lesson plans, reviewing his schedule, organizing his papers with the same careful precision he brought to everything. But today felt different. His movements were sharper, more deliberate, like he was working through a checklist in his mind. "So," I began, wrapping my hands around the warm mug, "about last night?" "What about it?" Owen's voice was neutral, but he still wasn't looking at me. "I know it probably looked. I know Damian can be a bit much, but you understand it wasn't anything serious, right? It's just how people are in that world. Everything's more intense, more dramatic." Owen finally looked up from his phone, his brown eyes studying my face with an expression I couldn't read. "Is that what you call it? Dramatic?" "Well, yes. I mean, it was just a kiss on the neck. It's not like we were making out or anything. I laughed, trying to lighten the mood. You're being a little sensitive about this, don't you think? Something flickered across Owen's face. Hurt, maybe, or disappointment. He closed his phone and slipped it into his pocket. I have to get to school early today, he said, gathering his papers into his leather satchel. Parent conferences start at 7. Owen, wait, I stood up, reaching for his arm. Can we please talk about this? I feel like you're making this into something it's not. He paused at the kitchen counter, his back to me. Seraphine, I watched my wife laugh while another man kissed her neck in front of a room full of people. They were recording it, cheering for it, and you posted it online with a caption about celebrating success. What exactly am I misunderstanding? His words hit me like ice water. You saw my post? Everyone saw your post. My mother called me at 6 this morning, asking if everything was okay with our marriage. Heat flooded my cheeks. Your mother has no business. My mother is concerned because her daughter-in-law is acting like she's single at work parties. Owen's voice remained calm, but I could hear the steel underneath. And honestly, Seraphine, I'm starting to wonder if that's what you want. That's ridiculous, I snapped, my defensive instincts kicking in. I work incredibly hard, Owen. I've helped build something amazing, and I deserve to be celebrated for it. I'm sorry if that makes you uncomfortable, but I'm not going to apologize for being successful. Owen turned around then, and I was startled by how tired he looked. This isn't about your success. This is about respect. For our marriage, for our family, for me. Respect? I could feel my voice rising. What about respect for what I've accomplished? You've never understood the pressure I'm under, the way I have to navigate that world. Sometimes you have to play the game, Owen. You wouldn't understand because you're content with your little classroom and your little life, but some of us want more. The words hung in the air between us like a blade. Owen's face went very still, and I immediately knew I'd gone too far. My little life, he repeated quietly. Owen, I didn't mean... Yes, you did. He picked up his satchel and headed for the door. I'll be home late tonight. I have papers to grade. The door closed behind him with a soft click, leaving me alone in our suddenly too quiet kitchen. I stood there for a moment, anger and guilt warring in my chest, before grabbing my phone to check the notifications that had been buzzing all morning. The video from last night had exploded across social media. Hundreds of likes, dozens of comments, shares climbing by the minute. Most of the responses were positive, friends and colleagues celebrating my success, praising my confidence, making jokes about boss energy and living your best life. But scattered throughout were other comments. What about her husband? This is so inappropriate. Feel bad for that guy in the background. I scrolled through them, my jaw tightening with each critical comment. These people didn't understand. They weren't in my world, didn't know the pressure, the expectations, the way success demanded sacrifices. My phone buzzed with a text from Damian. Hope I didn't cause any trouble at home. You were incredible last night. Coffee later to discuss the Henderson account. I stared at the message, my thumb hovering over the keyboard. I should decline, should focus on smoothing things over with Owen. Instead, I typed back, absolutely. The usual place at 10? His response was immediate. Perfect. Can't wait to celebrate our success properly. I told myself it was about work. The Henderson account was huge, potentially worth millions to the company. I was the lead on the project, and Damian was my boss. We had every reason to meet and discuss strategy. But as I got dressed, choosing my outfit more carefully than usual, I knew I was lying to myself. By the time I arrived at the office, the video had reached my coworkers. I could feel eyes on me as I walked through the lobby, hear the whispered conversations that stopped when I passed. Some of the attention felt admiring, looks of respect and perhaps envy from colleagues who wished they commanded that kind of notice from leadership. Others felt more judgmental, disapproving glances from the older, more conservative employees. Sarah, Marina appeared at my desk, practically vibrating with excitement. "Girl, you are everywhere today. Twitter, Instagram, LinkedIn. Everyone's talking about last night." "I know," I said, settling into my chair and opening my laptop. "It's a little overwhelming." "Overwhelming? Are you kidding me? This is amazing. You're trending, babe. Do you know how many women would kill for this kind of visibility in their careers?" Marina perched on the edge of my desk, her eyes bright with vicarious excitement. She'd always lived through my successes, celebrating my wins as if they were her own. It was one of the things I loved about our friendship, her unwavering support, her ability to see the positive in everything. Owen didn't take it well, I admitted, minimizing my email window to look at her. Marina's expression shifted to sympathy mixed with exasperation. "Of course he didn't. Sarah, I love Owen, you know I do, but he's never understood what you're capable of. He's threatened by your success. He says it's about respect." "Respect," Marina laughed. "Honey, respect is earned. And you've earned it. Look at what you've accomplished. You've helped launch a multi-million-dollar company. You're being recognized by industry leaders, and you're finally getting the credit you deserve. If Owen can't handle being married to a powerful woman, that's his problem, not yours." Her words settled over me like a warm blanket, soothing the guilt that had been gnawing at me since Owen left that morning. Marina was right. I had worked incredibly hard to get where I was. I deserved to be celebrated, to be seen as successful and desirable. If Owen couldn't appreciate that, maybe the problem wasn't with me. "You're right," I said, feeling some of my confidence returning. "I've sacrificed so much for this opportunity. I'm not going to apologize for finally being recognized." "Exactly," Marina squeezed my hand. "Now, tell me everything about Damian. That man is gorgeous, and the way he looked at you last night. Girl, that's a man who appreciates what he has." I felt a flutter in my stomach at the mention of Damian's name. "We're meeting for coffee this morning to discuss the Henderson account." Marina's grin widened. "The Henderson account, right. Just remember, Sarah, you deserve to be with someone who celebrates your success, not someone who makes you feel guilty for it." As Marina headed back to her desk, I tried to focus on my emails, but my mind kept drifting to Owen's words that morning. The hurt in his eyes, the way his voice had gone quiet and controlled. Part of me wanted to call him, to try to explain, to bridge the growing gap between us, but a larger part of me was angry. Angry that he couldn't be happy for me, couldn't see past his own insecurity to celebrate what I'd accomplished. I'd spent years supporting his teaching career, attending school functions, listening to him talk about lesson plans and difficult students. When was it my turn to shine? My phone buzzed with a notification, another 100 likes on last night's video. I watched it again, seeing myself through the camera's lens. Confident, successful, desired. This was who I was meant to be, not the quiet wife sitting in the background while her husband graded papers. At 9:45, I gathered my things for my meeting with Damian, checking my reflection in my phone's camera before heading to the elevator. I looked good, professional but approachable, successful but not intimidating. As the elevator descended toward the lobby, I made a decision. I wasn't going to apologize for being celebrated. I wasn't going to dim my light to make Owen more comfortable. If he couldn't handle being married to a successful woman, then maybe we needed to have a more serious conversation about what we both wanted from this marriage. The elevator doors opened, and I stepped into the lobby with my head high, ready to embrace whatever came next. The coffee meeting with Damian stretched into lunch, then into an impromptu strategy session that lasted until evening. We sat in the corner booth of an upscale bistro, our laptops open, papers spread across the polished wood table, but I found it increasingly difficult to focus on quarterly projections when Damian kept leaning close to point out details on my screen, his cologne making my head spin. "You're brilliant at this," he said, his finger tracing a line on my marketing analysis. "The way you've positioned our brand identity is exactly what investors want to see." "Thank you," I breathed, hyper-aware of how his knee brushed against mine under the table. I've been thinking about expanding our social media presence, maybe leveraging some of the buzz from last night. Damian's eyes lit up. The video? Absolutely. You looked incredible, confident, successful, exactly the image we want to project. You should post more content like that. I felt a warm flush of validation. Here was someone who understood, who saw my success as an asset rather than a threat. Owen thinks I should take it down. Owen doesn't understand branding, Damian said dismissively. In today's market, visibility is everything. You're not just representing yourself anymore, Seraphine. You're the face of our company's success story. By the time I got home, it was after 9 o'clock. Owen was sitting at our small dining table, papers spread in front of him. But instead of the usual chaos of student essays and lesson plans, everything was organized into neat stacks, labeled with sticky notes. "Hi," I said, dropping my purse by the door. "Sorry I'm so late. The Henderson meeting ran long." Owen looked up from his papers, his expression unreadable. 6 hours for one meeting. Well, it evolved into a broader strategy session. You know how these things go. I kicked off my heels and headed for the kitchen. "Have you eaten? I could order something." "I ate with Eva," Owen said quietly. I froze. Our 6-year-old daughter had been at Owen's mother's house for the weekend. I'd completely forgotten she was coming home tonight. "Where is she?" I asked, guilt creeping into my voice. "Asleep. She waited up until 8, but..." Owen gestured vaguely toward the hallway. "She drew you a picture. It's on the refrigerator." I walked to the kitchen and found Eva's drawing, held up with a magnet shaped like an apple, one of Owen's teacher gifts. The crayon family showed 3 figures: a tall man in blue, a small girl in pink, and a woman in red, standing far away from the other 2, her arms stretched towards something outside the frame. "She said you were reaching for your dreams," Owen said from behind me. "I asked her why Mommy wasn't standing with us, and she said you were too busy being important." The words hit me like a physical blow. "Owen, that's not fair. You know how demanding this project has been. I'm doing this for our family, for our future." "Are you?" He moved to stand beside me, both of us staring at our daughter's innocent interpretation of our family dynamics. "Because from where I'm sitting, it looks like you're doing this for yourself." I turned to face him, ready to defend myself, but something in his expression stopped me. He looked tired, older than his 34 years, with lines around his eyes I hadn't noticed before. "I found something interesting today," Owen said, walking back to the dining table. He picked up a sheet of paper from one of his organized stacks. "Eva's teacher called. Apparently, some of the other parents have been showing their kids a video that's been circulating online. Eva came home asking why Mommy was kissing her boss." My stomach dropped. "Owen, I can explain." "Can you?" He set the paper down carefully, his movements precise and controlled. "Because I've been trying to understand this for 2 days, and I keep coming back to the same conclusion." "Which is?" "You don't respect me anymore." His voice was quiet, matter-of-fact, as if he were discussing the weather. "Maybe you never did. Maybe I was just convenient until something better came along." "That's not true," I said, but even as the words left my mouth, I wondered if they were. When had I stopped seeing Owen as my partner and started seeing him as an obstacle to overcome? "I've been doing some research," Owen continued, gesturing to his organized papers. "Looking into our finances, our legal obligations, our daughter's needs. Just trying to understand what we're working with here." Something cold settled in my stomach. "What kind of research?" "The kind a responsible adult does when their marriage is falling apart." Owen's voice remained calm, but I could see the tension in his shoulders. "I've made some appointments for next week. I think we need to have some serious conversations about what we both want." Before I could respond, my phone buzzed with notifications. The second work party, the investor dinner I'd forgotten about in the chaos of the weekend, was being promoted across all our social channels. My face was prominently featured in the marketing materials, and the comments were already pouring in. Looks like you have another event, Owen observed, glancing at my phone screen. More opportunities to celebrate your success. The way he said it made my chest tight with anger. Yes, actually. It's an important investor dinner, and I'm being recognized for my contributions to the company. I'm sorry if that bothers you, but this is my career, Owen. This is what I've worked for. I know exactly what you've worked for, he said, returning to his papers. The question is whether it's worth what you're giving up to get it. I wanted to argue, to defend myself, to make him understand that I was finally becoming the person I was meant to be. Instead, I found myself staring at Eva's drawing, at the lonely figure reaching for something just outside the frame. I'm going to bed, I said finally. I'll be up in a while. I have some things to finish here. As I got ready for bed, I could hear Owen moving around the dining room, the soft sound of papers being shuffled and organized. When I finally drifted off to sleep, he was still out there, working with the methodical precision that had once comforted me, but now felt somehow ominous. I dreamed of spotlights and applause, of standing on a stage while faceless crowds cheered my name. But when I looked into the audience, searching for familiar faces, I found only empty seats where my family should have been. The investor dinner was held at the city's most exclusive hotel, in a ballroom that dripped with crystal chandeliers and gold accents. I'd chosen my outfit carefully. A black dress that was professional but striking, jewelry that caught the light just right. I wanted to look like success personified. Damian found me at the bar before the dinner began, looking devastatingly handsome in his tailored suit. "You look incredible," he said, his eyes traveling over me appreciatively. "Are you ready to charm some investors?" "Always," I replied, accepting the glass of champagne he offered. "I've prepared talking points about our market expansion and user acquisition strategies." "Perfect. But remember, tonight isn't just about numbers. It's about selling them a vision, making them believe in our story." He moved closer, his voice dropping to an intimate whisper, "Making them believe in you." The dinner progressed beautifully. I found myself seated at the head table, fielding questions from potential investors, discussing market trends and growth projections with the kind of confidence I'd never felt in my previous jobs. This was my element, the intersection of ambition and opportunity, where intelligence and charm could open doors that had been closed for so long. "Ms. Doral," said Margaret Chen, a venture capitalist known for her sharp eye and sharper tongue, "your marketing approach has been quite bold, some might say attention-grabbing. How do you balance personal branding with corporate representation?" I felt all eyes turn to me, aware that this was both a compliment and a challenge. "I believe authenticity is the key to effective marketing," I said smoothly. "Our audience responds to genuine passion and confidence. When they see our team celebrating our successes, they want to be part of that energy. Even when that celebration becomes viral?" Margaret's smile was thin, knowing. Before I could respond, Damian stood up, raising his glass. "I think what Margaret is really asking about is leadership," he said, his voice carrying across the room. "And Seraphine exemplifies the kind of bold, innovative leadership that drives success in today's market." The room murmured in agreement, glasses raised in my direction. I felt the familiar rush of validation, the intoxicating sense of being seen and appreciated for who I really was. "In fact," Damian continued, his eyes finding mine across the table, "I think we should give our investors a demonstration of the kind of dynamic energy that makes our company special." Before I fully understood what was happening, Damian had moved around the table to where I sat. The room had gone quiet, phones appearing as people sensed something worth recording. "Show them what confidence looks like, Seraphine," he said, his hand resting on my shoulder. And then, just as he had at the launch party, he leaned down and kissed my neck, this time lingering longer, his lips trailing along my skin as the room erupted in cheers and applause. I should have stopped him, should have pulled away, maintained professional boundaries, thought about Owen and Eva and the life I was systematically dismantling. Instead, I found myself laughing, tilting my head to give him better access, basking in the attention and approval of the room. The investors loved it. They saw passion, commitment, the kind of all-in energy that made companies succeed. Margaret Chen was taking notes, nodding approvingly. Other potential funders were leaning forward, engaged and interested. But as the applause died down and Damian returned to his seat, I caught sight of something that made my blood freeze. Through the ballroom's floor-to-ceiling windows, in the hotel lobby beyond, I saw a familiar figure standing perfectly still, watching. Owen. He was dressed in his good suit, the one he wore to parent-teacher conferences and school board meetings. In his hands was a manila envelope, thick with papers. Our eyes met through the glass, and I saw something in his expression I'd never seen before. Not anger, not hurt, but a kind of calm resolution that terrified me more than any argument could have. He raised the envelope slightly, a small acknowledgement that he'd seen everything, then turned and walked away. I excused myself from the table, my heart pounding as I made my way through the lobby, but Owen was already gone. The valet confirmed that a man matching his description had left in a Honda Civic just moments before. When I returned to the dinner, the conversation had moved on to quarterly projections and market analysis. I tried to focus, to engage with the investors' questions, but my mind kept returning to Owen's face, to the envelope in his hands, to the terrible certainty that something irreversible had just occurred. "Everything all right?" Damian asked as the evening wound down. "Fine," I said automatically, "just tired." But as I drove home through the city streets, my phone buzzing with congratulatory messages and social media notifications, I knew that nothing was fine. I'd gotten everything I thought I wanted: recognition, success, the admiration of powerful people. But the cost was becoming clearer with each passing mile. The apartment was dark when I arrived, Owen's car absent from the parking garage. I found a note on the kitchen counter, written in his careful teacher's handwriting: "Staying at my mother's tonight. We'll talk tomorrow." Oh. I crumpled the note and threw it away, telling myself I was too tired to deal with his dramatics. But as I lay in bed alone, staring at the ceiling, I couldn't shake the image of Owen's face through that window, or the weight of whatever had been in that envelope. Outside, the city hummed with late-night energy, but inside our apartment, the silence felt absolute. I woke up to 17 missed calls from Helena, Owen's mother. My phone had been on silent, buried under the pile of clothes I'd discarded after last night's dinner, and the red notification badges made my stomach clench with dread. The first voicemail was timestamped 6:23 a.m. "Seraphine, it's Helena. Owen is here with Eva and I think we need to talk. Please call me back." The second, 6:47 a.m. "Seraphine, I know you're probably sleeping, but this is important. Owen showed me some things, and I'm very concerned about Eva. Please call." By the 10th message, Helena's voice had shifted from concerned to coldly formal. "Seraphine, if you don't call me back by noon, I'm going to assume you're not interested in discussing your daughter's well-being. Owen has asked me to keep Eva for a few more days while you two sort things out." I glanced at the clock, 11:47 a.m. I'd slept through my alarm, missed 2 morning meetings, and apparently lost custody of my daughter without even realizing it. My hands shook as I dialed Helena's number. "Finally," she answered on the first ring. "Helena, I'm so sorry. My phone was on silent and I..." "Seraphine." Her voice cut through my explanation like ice. "I've known you for 8 years. I've watched you grow into a successful woman, and I've been proud to call you my daughter-in-law. But what I saw last night has me questioning everything I thought I knew about you." My mouth went dry. "What did you see?" "Owen showed me the video from your work dinner, the one that's all over social media this morning." Helena's voice was steady, but I could hear the disappointment underneath. "He also showed me the messages between you and your boss, the ones Eva accidentally saw on your iPad." "What messages?" But even as I asked, I knew. The flirty texts with Damian, the ones I'd convinced myself were just professional banter with a slight edge. The ones where you call my son boring, where you talk about feeling trapped in mediocrity, where you discuss meeting your boss at hotels for strategy sessions. Helena paused, letting the words sink in. Eva can read quite well for a 6-year-old, Seraphine. She asked Owen what trapped meant. The room started spinning. Helena, those messages were taken out of context. I never meant for Eva to see them, and I certainly never meant to hurt Owen. But you did hurt him, and more importantly, you hurt your daughter. Do you know what she told me this morning? I closed my eyes, bracing myself. She asked if Mommy was going to live with her boss now, because that's what happens when mommies and daddies don't love each other anymore. A 6-year-old shouldn't have to ask those questions, Seraphine. Tears started flowing down my cheeks. I love Eva more than anything. You know that. I know you think you do, but love isn't just a feeling, it's a choice. It's choosing your family over your ego, your daughter's stability over your public image. And lately, you've been making very different choices. Where's Owen? I asked, my voice barely a whisper. He's at school. He has parent conferences today, and despite everything that's happening, he's still showing up for his students. That's the kind of man your husband is, Seraphine. The question is whether you still deserve him. The line went dead. I sat on my bed, staring at my phone, feeling like the walls were closing in around me. My social media notifications were exploding. The video from last night's dinner had gone viral, shared thousands of times with comments ranging from admiring to appalled. Boss Lady was trending, with my face attached to think pieces about women's empowerment and corporate culture. But scrolled among the praise were other voices, darker ones. Screenshots of my messages with Damian had somehow leaked, posted on gossip forums, with headlines like Marketing Executive's Affair Exposed and Startup Star's Marriage Meltdown. My full name was attached to everything, along with photos of Owen and Eva that someone had pulled from my old social media posts. My phone rang. Marina. Sarah, oh my God, are you okay? I've been seeing some really nasty stuff online about you and Owen. I don't know, I said honestly. I think I've really messed up, Marina. Hey, no, don't you dare start doubting yourself now. Yes, things are messy, but that's what happens when you're breaking free from a situation that wasn't serving you. Owen's just trying to make you feel guilty for finally putting yourself first. Eva's involved now. She saw the messages between Damian and me. Marina was quiet for a moment. Okay, that's not ideal. But kids are resilient, Sarah. And honestly, maybe it's better that everything's out in the open now. No more pretending, no more trying to force something that isn't working. You think I should leave Owen? The words felt strange in my mouth. I think you should stop letting other people define what your life should look like. You're successful, you're desired, you're finally getting the recognition you deserve. Don't let anyone make you feel ashamed of that. After Marina hung up, I tried to focus on work, but concentration was impossible. Every notification made me jump. Every email could be another crisis to manage. I'd missed 3 meetings, and my assistant had fielded dozens of calls from reporters wanting to comment on the viral marketing executive story. At 2 p.m., Priya Joshi from HR knocked on my office door. Seraphine, do you have a few minutes to chat? Priya was in her late 30s, always professional, always diplomatic. She'd been with the company since its early days and had a reputation for handling sensitive situations with grace. Of course, I said, gesturing to the chair across from my desk. Priya closed the door behind her and sat down, her expression carefully neutral. I wanted to check in with you about recent events. There's been quite a bit of attention surrounding your interactions with Damian at company events. It's just social media noise, I said quickly. You know how these things get blown out of proportion. I understand that, but we've received some concerns from employees about workplace boundaries and professional conduct. Nothing formal, just conversations. My chest tightened. What kind of concerns? questions about favoritism, about whether personal relationships are influencing professional decisions. Again, nothing actionable, but as HR, I need to be aware of potential issues before they become problems. Damian and I have a professional relationship. Yes, we work closely together, but that's because I'm the lead on our biggest accounts. Any personal friendship is separate from our work dynamic. Priya nodded slowly. I believe that's your intention, but perception matters, especially in a startup environment where everyone's watching everyone else. I'm not asking you to change anything, just to be mindful of optics going forward. After Priya left, I sat alone in my office, staring out the window at the city below. For the first time since this all started, I felt truly isolated. Owen was pulling away, taking Eva with him. My colleagues were whispering behind my back. Even my success felt tainted now, overshadowed by questions about how I'd earned it. My phone buzzed with a text from Damian. Drinks tonight? I think we should discuss strategy for handling the media attention. I stared at the message for a long time before responding. I think I should go home and try to talk to my husband. Your call, but don't let other people's insecurities limit your potential. As I packed up my things to leave early, I caught my reflection in my office window. I looked successful. Designer clothes, perfect makeup, the corner office behind me. But underneath it all, I looked hollow, like I was wearing a costume that no longer fit. The drive home felt endless. I rehearsed what I would say to Owen, how I would explain that things had gotten out of hand, but that we could fix this, that our family was more important than any career achievement. But when I pulled into our apartment complex, Owen's car wasn't there. The apartment was empty, filled with the kind of silence that feels permanent. On the kitchen counter, I found another note. Seraphine. I've taken Eva to stay with my mother for a few days while I figure some things out. I think we both need space to decide what we really want. I've made some appointments for next week that I think will help us move forward, one way or another. Owen. Beside the note was a manila envelope, thick with papers. My hands trembled as I opened it and found printed screenshots of every message I'd sent to Damian over the past 3 months, every social media post, every photo from the work events. There were also financial documents, bank statements, mortgage papers, insurance policies, all organized with the same meticulous care Owen brought to his lesson plans. At the bottom of the stack was a single sheet of paper with a phone number and an appointment time. Davidson and Associates Family Law, Thursday, 2 p.m. I sank into a kitchen chair, surrounded by the evidence of my choices, finally understanding that Owen hadn't been sulking or trying to control me. He'd been preparing. The silence in the apartment was deafening, broken only by the constant buzz of my phone as the internet continued to dissect my life, one viral moment at a time. Thursday arrived like a death sentence. I'd spent the previous days in a haze of damage control, declining interview requests, avoiding social media, and sending increasingly desperate texts to Owen that went unanswered. Helena had agreed to let me talk to Eva once, a stilted phone conversation where my daughter asked if I was still being important and when I was coming to get her. Soon, baby, I'd promised, though I had no idea if that was true. I dressed carefully for what I suspected might be my last major public appearance. A black sheath dress, understated jewelry, my hair pulled back in a professional chignon. If this was going to be the end of something, I wanted to look like I was in control. The investor dinner at the Meridian Hotel ballroom felt like walking into a lion's den. Whispers trailed me through the lobby. That's her, the marketing VP from the videos. Eyes followed every step. I held my head high, clinging to the role of confident executive. Damian greeted me with a warm smile, pulling me into conversations with potential investors. For a moment, I slipped back into the familiar rhythm, data, vision, charm. Here, I was still valued. James Hartwell leaned in. Your recent visibility has generated buzz. How do you plan to leverage it? I smiled smoothly. Authenticity resonates. Our brand thrives on bold innovation and genuine passion. When people see our team celebrating success, they want to be part of that energy. Even when celebration becomes distraction, Patricia Vance asked, skeptical. Damian stepped in. Success inspires. Seraphine embodies fearless leadership. Applause followed his toast to me. I lifted my glass mechanically, but my gaze drifted to the lobby. Owen stood there, manila envelope in hand, calm and resolute. The room chanted for a speech. I stood. Thank you. This opportunity has taught me what I'm capable of, what I'm willing to sacrifice for success. Owen entered, speaking quietly to staff. A woman in a suit, his lawyer, followed. Sometimes difficult choices are required, I continued, voice shaking. Choices with consequences you never expect. Ms. Seraphine Doral, a staff member approached. Documents for you. The room hushed. Phones rose. I opened the envelope. Petition for dissolution of marriage. Custody papers. Evidence, texts, photos. My own words justifying betrayal. Owen watched from the doorway, expression unreadable. Damian tried to look over my shoulder. Seraphine, what's happening? I couldn't speak. The room spun. Whispers grew louder. Owen approached, voice low. I filed this morning. Joint legal custody, but Eva lives primarily with me. The papers explain everything. Owen, please. I tried talking. You chose your image over us. Now I'm choosing Eva's stability. He walked away. The ballroom doors closed behind him. I stood frozen, papers trembling in my hands, as investors stared, recording my final public humiliation. The woman who'd chased applause had finally gotten it, and lost everything that mattered.